What happens when a sitting member of Congress accuses a cabinet secretary of reviving Jim Crow, live, on the record? In today's explosive exchange, Congresswoman Summer Lee directly confronts Education Secretary Linda McMahon over diversity, race, and the future of public education. From African American history to the Tulsa Race Massacre, from Pride Month to the 2020 election, basic facts themselves are put on trial. McMahon refuses to answer simple yes or no questions. Lee refuses to let her off the hook. This wasn't just a policy disagreement. It was a warning about power, history, and who gets to decide what America's children are allowed to learn. Stay with us, because this debate tells us far more about the future of education than any budget proposal ever could.
Pennsylvania, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that in very many ways we've been talking around a lot of the issues with this administration. So to be honest and to be very clear, I want to say that this administration has undoubtedly revived the culture of racism we haven't seen since the Jim Crow era. They've made it clear that open attacks on Black and brown and other marginalized communities is not just tolerated, but it's encouraged. So when they call for removing of equity and inclusion and diversity and accessibility from schools in favor of quote-unquote traditional American values, it's indistinguishable from post-Civil War South advocating to rewrite history with the lost cause narrative to censor truths about slavery, or as they disappear students who write dissenting op-eds. It's reminiscent of the suppression of abolitionist newspapers. And this department's financial aid policies harken back to a time when higher education was reserved for affluent, well-connected, and predominantly white students. So I have some questions, about why this department is taking its leads from Jim Crow. Secretary McMahon, you've claimed that you want to drastically reduce the already very small federal role in education, and also that you will not cut Title I-A funding. That is still your position, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I'd like a yes or no answer. Do you believe your April 3rd attempt to revoke Title I-A funding from states unless they signed a certification of compliance with your political viewpoint was consistent with giving states more control over education?
There's been no reduction in funding for Title I-A.
As of now. There has not been yet. But again,
and it is not in going forward in the budget.
So you believe that okay. Yes or no, is Title I-A funding actually secure for every school district and state that currently receives it? Or is your goal to make Title I-A conditional on states refusing to provide students of color, LGBTQA students, students with disabilities, or other marginalized students opportunities to participate in diverse, inclusive, equitable, and accessible learning environments?
No, that's what I answered. I-A funding is intact.
Okay. So let's talk about so-called illegal DEI, as you all have called it, a phrase you've continually bring up, that I'm still unclear on, especially after 3 federal judges have preliminarily ruled that your illegal DEI guidance is likely unconstitutional and unenforceable, illegal, as it were. Secretary McMahon, during your confirmation hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African-American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
I don't know what both sides of African-American history would be.
Well, if African-American history is part of
certainly, but what we recognize throughout education is that a course is only 1 year or 1 semester. It would be impossible to teach African history and say European history at the same time. Do you not agree that it makes sense that there would be separate courses for these courses of study? It has happened throughout history. We're able to do it not just in history courses. We're able to do it with different types of literature courses or different types of music courses. One wouldn't learn about Baroque music and necessarily have to also learn about African drumming at the same time, right? We can separate those courses.
Yes, we can. And I think just as we teach U.S. history as a separate course.
Certainly. So you do not agree. So you do agree that African American cultures and African history should not be eliminated from courses, particularly AP African history?
Well, I think that African history can certainly be taught and not be considered a DEI course.
Oh, thank you. I have a few other examples that I would like your thoughts on, simple yes or no. If this is a legal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That was a specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an incredibly specific example.
I
named a
those in your
specific
questions,
book.
and I will look into it and get back to you on them.
Thank you. How about a school having a voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that
Voluntary.
well, let's make sure that in our schools
This is yes or no?
we're looking. No, it's not.
Okay. How about social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election?
I think our studies should all be taught accurately.
Yes or no?
I think our studies should
No,
be
no, no.
taught
The
accurately.
question was, do you believe that social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election is an illegal DEI? Yes or no?
I think I have said we should teach accurately. We should.
No,
be
you have
on all
not
sides.
answered the question.
Well, I
I
answered
don't
the
understand
question.
why you're incapable
I'm
of
just
answering.
not giving you the answer you want.
No,
but
I want
answered
the answer,
question.
whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no.
No, the answer is I.
The
think our
answer is
courses
yes or
should be
no.
taught accurately.
Gentleladies,
Thank you so
time
much.
is-
I yield back.
This exchange between Congresswoman Summer Lee and Education Secretary Linda McMahon is not merely a heated committee moment, it is a microcosm of the national battle over education, race, and political power in America. At its core, this debate centers on three issues: federal authority versus state control, the definition and weaponization of DEI, whether historical truth itself is being politicized. What makes this moment especially striking is not just what was said, but what was repeatedly not said. Congresswoman Summer Lee adopts a prosecutorial approach. Her strategy is clear: frame the administration's education policies as historically regressive. Tie modern DEI rollbacks to Jim Crow-era exclusion. Force McMahon into binary yes or no answers. Lee's rhetorical strength lies in historical comparison. By invoking the post-Civil War South, lost cause narratives, suppression of abolitionist newspapers, she positions today's DEI restrictions not as neutral policy changes, but as continuations of racial control through education. Most importantly, Lee reframes DEI from a political buzzword into real-world consequences: who gets financial aid, who sees themselves in curriculum, and who is quietly erased. Her insistence on examples: Tulsa Race Massacre, Ruby Bridges, Pride Month, the 2020 election, is deliberate. These are tests of credibility, not trick questions. Secretary McMahon's approach is defensive and cautious, but to her detriment. She consistently avoids direct definitions of illegal DEI, clear boundaries of what is or isn't acceptable curriculum, yes or no answers that could later be scrutinized legally or politically. From an analyst standpoint, this signals policy ambiguity by design. When McMahon says, "I'd have to look into it," about the Tulsa Race Massacre, it is not merely a knowledge gap. It suggests a governance strategy where uncertainty becomes leverage. Her repeated fallback, "we should teach accurately," sounds reasonable, but fails under scrutiny because accuracy itself is what's being disputed. In political communication, refusal to answer becomes the answer. Perhaps the most consequential moment involves Title I funding, which serves low-income school districts. Lee's key question: is funding truly secure, or is it conditional on ideological compliance? McMahon insists funding is intact, but does not deny the existence of certifications tied to political guidelines. This is critical. Conditional funding has historically been one of the federal government's most powerful tools for shaping education, sometimes for civil rights, sometimes against them. The fear articulated by Lee is not hypothetical. It's rooted in precedent. This debate matters because it reveals a shift from arguing what students should learn to arguing whether certain history should exist at all. When an education secretary hesitates to affirm the reality of racial violence, the legitimacy of election outcomes, the educational value of African American history, it raises alarms not about partisanship, but but about democratic literacy. Education policy is no longer just about schools. It's about national memory. In conclusion, Summer Lee used history as a weapon of accountability. Linda McMahon used ambiguity as a shield. One side demanded clarity. The other relied on vagueness. And in modern governance, vagueness is never neutral. This wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a preview of the battles ahead over who controls truth, history, and the future of American classrooms.